Welcome to another episode of Do Money Differently within our financial success newsletter of the same name, and bringing you another really fun guest, a friend of mine, but also get ready for a lot of value as we not only bring you money investing content to help you do your money differently, but we've also shared with our subscribers that we're going to continue to give you content related to what you told us you're interested in: entrepreneurship, personal development. And Kraig Kann here is someone that can add a lot of value when it comes to whether you're an employee, whether you are looking to go out on your own as an entrepreneur. Communication is key. And so I'm excited to have Kraig, but before I introduce him to you, I want to give a little bio. Kraig, man, this goes on forever, by the way. So I'll give you a quick summary to our
You're going to make me sit here through all of this?
Yeah, I know. Don't you hate that part? But hey, our listeners and our viewers and subscribers want to know more about who you are. Obviously, I met you first in Orlando. Our two sons, your son Trent and my son Luke, played football together in high school. That's how we actually met. But Kraig has a 25-year television career where you started off, and I'm going to ask you more about your beginnings in TV, certainly with the Golf Channel. You also were the director of the LPGA and communications director rather of LPGA Professional League. You're a keynote speaker. You've had numerous engagements with that as a keynoter, and you're the author of a book. And you've also interviewed a lot of people with your podcast called Tracks to Success. And I've listened to a few of those, and it's been fantastic. So again, welcome to Do Money Differently, Kraig Kann.
Hey, it's good to be with you. I appreciate that. It's been an interesting ride. I think the first thing is I even listened to that is the number of pivots along the way. Wanted to do TV my whole life, dating all the way back to being 7 and 8 years old, and so I achieved that goal. That was a lifelong dream to find my way into a TV job, and then ended up at Golf Channel for 18 years at the network level, and then pivoted to be a chief communications officer of a professional sports league. Didn't see that coming. Didn't really think I'd be running my own business, but that's what I do now, and grateful for all of it, to be perfectly honest. A lot of different things have come my way, so I'm having a great time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. And yeah, you're an entrepreneur the last several years as well. But again, fascinated by your Golf Channel. Talk more about that, because when I was in Cincinnati and before we moved our family to Orlando, I would be literally around this time of year in the winter in Ohio, gray, 20 degrees. You remember your Missouri upbringing. I want to learn more about your upbringing, where you went to school and all that. I know, but I want our viewers to know. But I'm watching from our house in Cincinnati in the winter in my mid 20s or so, mid late 20s. I'm like, look at the golf courses down there. They call it the Florida Swing, right? The tournaments down there in January. I'm like, hey, there's a new a golf channel on cable. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I see your face, and I didn't know you from Adam, but I thought it was a fun beginning. So share more about that. Two things: share where you grew up, where you went to school, tell more about your aspiration to get into TV, and then how Golf Channel started. And then we'll certainly get into some of the value you're going to bring our subscribers as well.
Well, I was that kid at 7 or 8 years old that knew exactly what he wanted to do. And that doesn't happen very often, but I grew up in suburban Chicago in the west suburbs. I'm a White Sox fan, by the way. And I'm actually proud to admit it. It's been a tough ride lately. But yeah, I played 3 sports in high school. I went to the University of Missouri because at the time, they were the only school in the country that owned and operated an affiliate TV station. It was an amazing broadcast journalism program. That's why I went there, to achieve that dream, and spent 4 years there. My first job out of school was in Columbus, Georgia. I wasn't even doing sports. I was doing news mostly. And the sports guys liked me, so I got to do a few things here and there. Reese Davis from College Game Day was actually in that market as well when I was there.
Oh, wow.
I then went to Fort Myers, Florida. I was there for about 3 years. I was the number 3 sports guy on a 3-person staff, learned so much and had some opportunities as well. And when I did get to anchor, my co-anchor was Hoda Kotb from the Today Show, which is also kind of an interesting thing. And she's as great as everybody says she is. I had a blast there. I ended up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Grand Rapids for 4 years. And I was the sports guy there on the weekends. And then started doing weekdays. And then my agent called me and said, hey, there's this new channel, the Golf Channel. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. Let's send a tape there. And back then it was tapes, right? It wasn't like this link on your computer. Yeah, there were over 1,000 applicants for this job. They flew me down first class. By the way, Todd, they flew me back coach, which is a story I like to tell people. It's just kind of funny. And the reason they did that, by the way, I found out later, was they flew me first class to let me know it was going to be a first class operation. They flew me back coach to let me know that there were going to be some bumps along the road, that it wasn't going to be 5-star hotels, that it wasn't going to be first class airfare. We were going to have to work really hard. And from the very beginning, when we launched in 1995, it wasn't the Golf Channel to all of us or what we tried to do for everybody else. It was Golf's channel. It was the first niche network tied to sports. I mean, the NFL network was not around. The tennis channel was not around. All those things, MLB network, not around. NBA TV, not around. So the Golf Channel paved the way for a lot of things, and that's because of Arnold Palmer and a man named Joe Gibbs, and not the football coach or the guy tied to race cars.
Yeah.
It was an amazing opportunity. We launched in 1995. Tiger Woods was still an amateur and then turned professional, and I was the guy that was in Milwaukee when he had his press conference and said, hello, world. And we were off to the races. I was the PGA Tour beat reporter for a number of years. I was the play-by-play guy for 3 years, which was a great opportunity as well. And then I went full-time studio and hosted Golf Central and the pre- and post-game shows. And I had a blast. I mean, through golf, I've been able to interview 5 presidents of the United States. I've flown in an airplane with Arnold Palmer. I've done some things that most people just don't really get to do. Been to the White House 2 times. That's just been amazing. And it's all because of the game of golf. And now, having pivoted after my 5 years at the LPGA as Chief Communications Officer, I'm also living a dream, getting to share all these experiences and help people present and communicate the best of themselves and the best of their organization.
Wow. Love that. You had share that quick story before we move into some questions to an Arnold Palmer story of you being on his plane, right? And I believe it was something like this, and then I'll let you continue. But you were coming back to your home, and you land in his pull up in his hangar, right? And you're ready to go home for a long day to your family, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to?" You tell a story. You're ready to go home, and what does Arnold Palmer tell you?
So he was launching a brand new golf course in Atlanta, Georgia, suburban Atlanta, Conyers, where the Olympics had been in 1996. And they built the golf course, the Arnold Palmer design, on the equestrian site. Golf Channel came to me and said, hey, Kraig, we're going to send you and our cameraman, Al Pollock, up to Conyers to cover the story. I go, wow, that's pretty cool. They said, well, you're going to fly with Mr. Palmer. I said, wait, what? So we went to the airport at Orlando Airport the next day and hopped on the plane. Arnold Palmer was flying it. He had his co-pilot that was with him all the time. And his late wife Winnie was in there as well. And it was just an amazing experience. We flew up there to Conyers and he played the golf course. I interviewed all the dignitaries, interviewed Mr. Palmer. We charted his day. We flew back. And when we got to the hangar, which by the way was pristine, right? The floor with the iconic logo and everything. I said, Mr. Palmer, thank you very much. Just an amazing day. He goes, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going home, sir. We're going to work on putting this story together and get ready for the next day and putting it on Golf Central. He said, you're not going anywhere. I said, what are you talking about? So he goes to the back of his airplane and he wheels out this Coleman cooler, and in it are a bunch of beers, and he throws down 4 director's chairs and said, we're going to sit around and have a beer. I call home and I said, I'm going to be a little late. Why? I said, Mr. Palmer just said we're having a beer. And when the king says we're having a beer, we're going to have a beer. So we sat there, and I'll tell you, if you look over my shoulder, you see Mr. Palmer at St. Andrews. And, he's been a big part of my life as far as how I carry myself or try to carry myself. And I always remember about that day, he did exactly what his brand has always been, and that's make other people feel like they're the most important person in the room. And that's how he made me feel. And I've never forgotten that. I've always tried to treat people with respect and, lift them up in a way like he did to me that day. And I always tried to carry myself, through him in the many years that I worked at Golf Channel.
That's cool. That's a great story. Love that. Okay. We now are starting something new with our guests. Before we get into the value that you're going to finally bring to our, but I know these stories are entertaining, and I love to hear all the people. There's so we could talk forever on all the people that you've interviewed. I love your Mike Tirico interview. What a super guy in his humble beginnings and where he's gone as an announcer in so many different leagues and certainly the NFL. All right. So since we are called Do Money Differently, tell me your one of your dumbest money mistakes you've ever made. Could go back to when you were young or even as recent as this morning.
Yeah, I don't. I don't really hammer myself for a whole lot of things or have a whole lot of regrets, but I can tell you that it was probably around the time I knew you or met you. Our family bought a condo in Hilton Head Island, living in Orlando, 5 hour drive, 5.5, whatever it is. And we were able to buy this 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2.5 bath condo, 2 stories, about a block and a half from the ocean. It was amazing. And my dad had passed away, and so I used some of my inheritance from him as kind of a tribute to my dad, really to give something back to the family. I remember, to be blunt about it, it was like $170,000 or something like that at the time. So you can just imagine, this is probably back 2002, 3, somewhere around there, 2003. And I decided not to buy it with cash. I actually did a mortgage on it, and we went up there all the time. We went there all the time. We went there every long weekend. We would go there for spring break, summers, etc. And after about 5 years, my kids were like, Dad, we always go to Hilton Head. We just always go to Hilton Head every single time. And we started thinking about it, and we decided to put it on the market just to see what it would fetch and say, okay, we'll do something else. And we ended up selling that condo for about 300, okay, which is a really great thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing by any stretch. But today, I'm like, why did I do that? I should have paid cash for it. I should have, instead of selling it, just rented it, because that same condo today is at about 700 grand. And I kick myself, not because of the money. I mean, it is a dumb money mistake, or it's a money issue. And you know, we always tell people, make the best decisions you can with the information that's right in front of you at that moment. And at that moment, that's what I was living. So, you know, you're thinking, okay, I just made $130,000 on this thing or whatever. But in hindsight, I should have rented it out. I would still have it today. I'd be able to go there. I could renovate it, and my kids would still be able to go back years later. And so I regret that big time. That has nothing to do with the money I spent on trading cards that I did nothing with and all the other things that I did with money. But that's the one that hurts me. That pains me.
We all have them. I've got numerous. And then the last question, again for fun, what's one of your best money moves you've ever made while young or as recent as this morning?
I mean, look, this is going to be not the answer you're really looking for. I paid for my kids to go through school. All 3 of them went to the University of Missouri. I effectively brainwashed them to go to Mizzou as well. And they're all uber successful in my mind and their mind right now. I don't know how they think about themselves, but 2 of them are in medicine. One's a NICU nurse, one's a PA in neurosurgery, and the other one's an assistant buyer for a major fashion corporation and flying around on jets. I'm beyond proud. And that's obviously a lot of money to put your kids through school. Not everybody has that ability to do that. It took me a while to be able to do it. And now that I finally got them off my payroll and paid off, that's a pretty positive thing. So that's not my best investment as far as something for me personally, but for me, as far as pride and something that I can live with as a legacy, yeah, that's my smartest decision.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right, let's get into some of the questions about and conversation about what you do and the value you can bring our audience when it comes to personal development. And then when I say that, sometimes I go, what is personal development? Well, as I've told my adult kids too, it is about how you communicate, how you come across, just within any beginning with a handshake. And
Right.
man, right? I remember in my kitchen growing up, I would literally tell my son Jack, Luke, and Alec, and then daughter Mia when she was 5, 6. I began literally saying, "Hi, I'm Daddy Romer," and I would pretend to give them the handshake. And I said, "Make it strong." And so,
Yeah.
that's one element, of course, but Just talk more about what you've got going on with Can Advisory Group, with your Elevate You program, and how you're helping people stand out from the crowd.
So, a couple of things. Number one, I'll start with this as far as young people. I encouraged strongly all of my kids to take public speaking. I think it's one of the biggest values that anybody can have. Public speaking takes many forms. It's not just standing on a stage with a microphone in front of people doing a keynote speech. It's an email, it's a text message, it's writing a letter to somebody, if anybody even does that anymore. Those are all speaking opportunities, and they're all about messaging and communication and leaving an impact. There's a survey by the Carnegie Institute that suggests that 85% of our wealth, or the money that we make or have, is due to human engineering. The ability to communicate, negotiate, speak to others. How do you deliver you, right? How do we communicate with folks and engage and network? That's 85% of our income is tied to our ability to do that successfully. Only 15% of our income, according to this study, is based upon what we went to school for, our trade, which says a whole lot to me. It doesn't say don't go to college. It doesn't say don't create higher education opportunities for yourself. What it says is, to me, we need to be able to articulate ourselves in front of others. We need to be able to communicate a positive image of ourselves, be able to shake somebody's hand, be able to smile, be able to make them remember us. So I think that's really, really important. And at Can Advisory Group, we're all about elevating communication. That's what we do. And when I started it, I called it Can Advisory Group, even though it was just me, because I wanted to continue to add people to it. Work with organizations and their people to help them present the best of their story, the organization story, the brand story, and the best of themselves. Working with employees to create ambassadors who understand how to present themselves and present the organization. At the end of the day, people don't buy companies or products first. They buy people first, and they buy something they feel connected to. So it's really important. And I do workshops called the Elevate Workshop. I have a one-on-one executive coaching program called A Brand New You, elevating presence and amplifying performance, working with people to help them do that one-on-one. And then you mentioned the Elevate You program, which is tied to colleges and universities, helping them while they're on campus become better brand ambassadors. It's right up the alley of what you do on a regular basis. You're a part of the organization with me as well, doing some work with me, which is great. And then another program that I have called Elevate Plus, which is the Elevate Workshop with the addition of 3 brand ambassadors, Can Advisory ambassadors. I call them, celebrity ambassadors. They're championship ambassadors. And they're from 3 walks of sports. Dan Mullen, now the coach at UNLV football, who got Mississippi State to #1 in the country.
Yeah.
Stacey Lewis, 2-time major champion, #1 in the world on 2 occasions, and also the captain of the U.S. Solheim Cup team for the United States twice, a champion in her own right. And then Chris Pronger, who won a Stanley Cup, who's won 2 gold medals for Canada, Hockey Hall of Fame, MVP. I mean, 3 champions who add a lot of value to me in the workshops. That's what I've been doing. I love doing my keynote speeches and talks in front of people, but it's all about sharing the message and helping people to be able to communicate better.
That's fantastic. I'm going to share with the audience some of the quotes and testimonials about you. So I know you don't like hearing things. No one likes to be, but too bad. You're going to have get some love on you here. Quote, this is what one person has said. A few people have said after attending one of Kraig's workshops. After attending one of Kraig's workshops, I felt like I was 10 feet tall. Quote, Kraig is like a caffeine jolt for my ego. And then finally, motivating, captivating, and inspiring. And that doesn't surprise me since I've known you and how you walk your talk. You have been an effective communicator from the get-go. So with that and young people, what would you say to, I get it everywhere I go on my speaking tour. I have a lot of interest in wanting to start something on the side, a side hustle, right? That's been around for about 15 years, that word.
Yeah.
But it's more than that. It's not just, hey, nothing wrong. I tell people, hey, if you DoorDash for 10 hours a week, great. And start investing that, from the money side, go do that. Use some spare time. But then they're saying, I want to really go out on my own and, try and do an online business. But you said something that was really striking to me, that communication and effective presenting is in a text message, in an email that's not in front. What would you say to some young people that are, we all have that fear, man, what if, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I'm this enough, all that BS that goes in our heads about what we believe about ourselves that's not true. What would you say to young people, one or two things when they want to go out on their own, that they
Mm.
should think about themselves and do from a communication standpoint?
It's a good question. I'll throw a few things at you. The first thing is that I don't think that people who go to school today are prepared for the pivot, the eventual pivot. It happens to everybody. Life is not a straight line. Our careers are not a straight line. I'm proof of that. You're proof of that. Look, we don't very often always take direct flights. We have to connect. People change majors all the time in school. And I think I want to do this, and ultimately maybe I want to do that. But we're not really prepared for that. We don't have people coaching us on that. So I think that's a reality that people need to understand. Second thing is we all need to figure out what our superpower is. I think that's really important, because if all of a sudden an organization that you're with, through no fault of your own, decides they have to make layoffs or furlough people, it happened during COVID, and somebody is left out on the street with a lot of talent, and maybe there are 30 other people out on the street, with the same job title, if you will. What separates you from somebody else? How do you stand out? How do you get noticed from other people? That's really important to figure out what it is that you have in your toolbox that others might not have. And we need to figure out what that differentiator is. It's really important if we want to continue to go like this. So we need to dig deep and figure out what we're good at. When people tell us that we're really great at something, or when we amaze at something, or when we make something look easy, take personal note of that, because ultimately you need to be able to figure that out. The other thing that I would say is a lot of people don't know their own story. They have no idea if somebody said, "Who are you? And why should I care? Why should I pay attention?" Most people don't have an answer to that. Number one, they don't like to talk about themselves. Most people think that most people on the other side don't care. That's inaccurate. We're always looking for relevancy, and we listen to people's stories, but you got to know your own. And so I coach people on understanding the value of their story and being able to present that story to others. If you look over my shoulder, you might see a green shoe over there, and I use those in my workshop. I've got a slide that's got 5 pairs of white shoes and 1 pair of green shoes, and the green shoe stands out. And that's what we're looking to do. How do we separate ourselves from other people? So I've been doing that for years. That's what I was trying to figure out. And I think sometimes, look, all I ever wanted to be was on TV. Didn't think I was going to be a chief communications officer. And I didn't know if I could do it effectively. But when I was there, I stretched myself. I learned a lot of things. I was wide open with my eyes and my ears to try to learn from the executive leadership team I got to be a part of. And I say I got to be a part of. That was a great gift for me. So I think all those things are really important, Todd. But the value of being able to communicate effectively and present the story is huge, because that's how we remember. And I'll leave you with this on that topic. When I keynote speak, I tell people I have 2 jobs. The first job is to make people remember what they're supposed to remember. That's my message, whatever that is. I got to make people remember that. The second job is I have to make them remember that I was the one that delivered that message. In other words, when they walk out the door at the end of the day, can they say to somebody, "I just listened to Kraig Kann deliver his message"? Or do they just say, "Yeah, we had this speaker today"? There's a big difference. And word of mouth marketing is a really important thing, and our brand is dependent upon that.
I love that. That's great, man. I learn from you all the time. So you get me fired up. I got some caffeine jolt going right now too, man. I do. I love it. I I remember calling you. This is a quick side story that just came to my mind. I remember calling you and another friend of mine, good friend of mine, Marty Grunder, who does a lot of speaking in the landscape green industry, about 5 years ago. And I'm speaking to a large credit union conference of CEOs, CFLs, all exec team of a lot of credit unions in 3 states, Florida, Alabama, and I believe it was Mississippi. And it was held at a conference center in Destin, Florida. I finished speaking, and it's a pretty large crowd, maybe 150, 200. I felt like I absolutely sucked.
Mm.
I couldn't wait for my own presentation to get over, which is kind of bizarre. This is weird. So I left and the applause, and I'm like, I'm like, I have no idea what you're applauding about because I sucked. Anyway, I am feeling the same natural guy. I wasn't good. I don't know if I am good. Am I? Can I be a better speaker? I mean, I had all those negative emotions that we all have as human beings, and I'm literally walking. Oh, you were great. Some people who are in the back, administrative assistants. Oh, that was really good. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I got my head down. I'm leaving the conference center, heading to the parking lot, and I hear this man say, "Hey, Todd." And I'm like, yes. Steve Swafford, CEO of Alabama Credit Union. You were fantastic in there. Here's my card. We need to do business together. I remember calling you though, calling you and
Mm-hmm.
Marty. I'm like, hey, you do a lot of speaking. Is it just me? But do you ever feel like you suck sometimes? And you're like, oh yeah, of course. I'm like, ah, thanks, Kraig. Thanks. I feel better. And you won't believe what happened in the parking lot. The CEO thought I did great, even though I sucked.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
just got to keep going, right? You got to keep going no matter what you're
You
doing.
do. I mean, here's the thing about that. There's opportunity and there's obligation. And a lot of people say, oh, I have to go to New York, or I have to go speak at this, or I have to give this presentation. I have to get on a plane and go. No, 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 you don't. You get to. And so I always want people to know that the 30 seconds that I walk up on the stage are really important, and the 30 seconds walking off the stage. I need to let people know that I'm excited to be there. And I need to let people know at the end that I was glad I had the opportunity to be there. All those things are important. There's anxious and there's anxiety. Anxiety, showing the nerves. Anxious, I think about the positives that can come from the experience. And a lot of people get caught up in what can go wrong as opposed to all that can go right. Sounds like you were caught up in what was going wrong as opposed to the things that you did well and making a connection with people. And that's really important. It's one of the things I work on with people. We don't get a lot of time to make an experience, something really engaging. So the average attention span of a human being, 8 seconds. If you look at studies, 8 seconds. That's not a lot of time. So that's why I wrote the book, Can You Get Our Attention? It's not easy, and we have to work at that. So what I would tell people is start with the end in mind. And this goes to your finances too. Where do you want to be at the very end? Okay, then I'm going to work backward and I'm going to make a game plan to try to achieve that goal. That's what you do financially for people. You want them to see the pot of gold at the end, but you got to get there. So when it comes to the speaking engagement or communicating with people, I always think, how do I want them to leave the room? Because that's when my brand begins. What do I want them to say about what I just said? What do I want them to tell other people about what I just said? What do I want them to think about what I just said? What do I want them to share? But most important, how do I want them to feel? Because emotion is the most important thing we can create with an audience. So if I want the standing ovation at the end, then I got to work my way backwards and I got to figure out what that audience wants. What are they craving? What do they need? Can't be all about me. It's got to be about them. It's always about the audience. And we need to focus on that. And that's how I build my message. So, you were talking about thinking you sucked, okay? Well, I will second guess things in my talks as well. I'll second guess something coming off of this podcast when we're done. But one thing I will never second guess is preparedness. I will always prepare. I will always have a message. I will always think about my audience. And I will always work to not just inform, but I will work to entertain. Because it is an experience, after all, that I'm trying to give, not a talk.
It's great. I feel like I'm paying you for a personal one-on-one coaching. So thank you for the free coaching right now for
You're
me
welcome.
and everyone else. I know that I can guarantee you that those watching and our subscribers are getting a lot from it as they gain that confidence, right? The confidence to try something, like you said, to pivot. And I love the fact that you said, I get to go and do this. On the
Yeah.
flip side, as well, some of the things that we teach inside of Do Money Differently is that mindset shift. We as humans, we go to what if this is going to happen to me? What if I end up at age 50 and I have very little money? What if I live under a bridge? All that anxiety, the negative, what if it's always negative correlated? Well, how about we flip the switch and what if I start managing money the way that Do Money Differently teaches? Or what if I start taking these quick, what if, like, yeah, the positive side. where my family could be down the road. Where so very much aligned in that, and obviously it kind of makes sense as to why we will be working together to give more value, right? Any for
Time
about
management
yeah,
is really big, Todd. I'll share
okay,
something on time management.
yeah,
Just gave a talk on time management. I actually gave an experience because it wasn't a talk, and I made it about them. And a lot of people went in there. It was Austin, Texas on a stage, and a bunch of people thought that I was just going to talk about desktop time management. How do they do their calendar on their computer? Sure, I talked about that. But one of the things that I shared, the most important thing that I shared is how do we, you talk about managing money, how do we manage our schedule for a week? What do we do to not just accomplish the things we have to do, but how do we focus on the things that we get to do to better ourselves? If you don't invest time in yourself in a given week, you are absolutely just going through the motions. Your career is leading you. You're not leading your career. So Sunday nights are really important for me because I'll write down the things that I want to achieve during the week, that by Friday that I'm going to feel happy about, that I'm going to feel like I had a fulfilling week. I write that stuff down. And then when I build out my calendar, I block off time, and there's certain things that I have to do. Those are the things you just need to do. But then I'm going to block off other time. And so calendar building is a philosophy of how you're going to use that time during a given week. And then you've got to execute that plan. But a lot of people mail it in by a Friday. I don't mail it in. Fridays are important to me. I use a period of time every Friday to connect with people I haven't talked to in a while. It might be a potential client, but I'm not asking them for anything. It might be somebody that I had a friendship with for years, but we just kind of lost touch. And those types of things are really important to building a network. And I think it's super important that people think about that. So when you're talking about planning to build your money and your wealth, our wealth, one of the biggest currencies that we can have are personal relationships, a personal network, and the ability to communicate with people when you're not even wanting to do business with them. You're just wanting to be somebody that can help and add value.
love that intentionality, and you do that very well, my friend. That's fantastic. You're giving a lot of great value. I'm looking at my last question because you've given such great insight, not only for me, but our subscribers to take the initiative, choose to pivot and not be afraid of it, learn some of these skill sets. But just for fun, tell me one or two of your most fun interviews that you've had. I mentioned Mike Tirico. I think he's fantastic, calm, cool, and collected. But you've had many. But just one or two before we sign off.
You know, there's a lot. I mean, one of the beauties of having a podcast called Tracks to Success, inspiring people, inspiring stories, are that you get to meet people from all walks. Bob Bodine is a guy that stands out to me from the most recent season, author of a couple of books, The Power of Who, which is that you know all the people you need. You don't have to continue to build your network for the rest of your life. And
Yeah.
he also wrote a book called Two Chairs, which is also really interesting. He is the number one guy in the US when it comes to executive search in sports and entertainment. And he was fascinating. I loved every bit of that. He was great. Another interesting guy that just came to my mind when you started asking the question is Greg Burkhalter. He's known as the LinkedIn guy, and he'll talk to you forever and a day about building a brand online and how you want to showcase that. That was a fascinating interview. Sure, talking to Joe Buck was great. Talking to Tirico is great. I love talking to all the people in that. Chris Harrison, the former host of The Bachelor, was a fabulous interview. And to be able to end it with the final question tonight, when you're ready, and all that stuff was really cool. I said I've interviewed presidents all through golf, got to spend time, obviously, with Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and Tiger Woods for sure. But at the end of the day, I think the older I get, the more that I've tried to, and this is going to sound kind of cheesy, man, I've tried to invest time in interviewing some of my really good friends to make sure we narrow our circle as we get older, because we just don't have time for all of this other stuff. You're focused on your kids and all that. But, I really try to spend a lot of time now with myself and with other people that are really close to me. I love the idea of building a bigger brand through my business and meeting people, giving back. I have Kann Broadcast Talent Coaching division as well, where we help up and coming sportscasters or newscasters or meteorologists. So I enjoy all of that stuff, but man, just singling out a couple of interviews, it's not that easy. Cole Swindell was a great one, by the way. If you're into country music, he was fabulous.
That's great. Yeah, I bet it's hard to narrow down a couple. Well, where can our listeners, viewers get more information to learn more about you as well, Kraig?
So, from a keynote speaking perspective, they can go to kraigcannspeak.com. Okay, get that? kraigcannspeak.com. And it's 2Ks on Kraig and Kann. They can go to cannadvisory.com to learn more about all the offerings of the organization. And if you're an up-and-coming sportscaster, broadcaster, newscaster, any of that, and you want to get better, we elevate. We have an amazing coaching staff, and you can find information there at cannbroadcastcoaching.com. But you can find me on LinkedIn. You can connect with me. If you're interested in bringing me in, I can tell you this. I don't do keynotes and I don't do workshops. And they'll be like, wait a second, that's what it says on your website. And I say, yeah, I know it does. What I do and what I focus on is delivering an experience that people will talk about after we're done. And it's interactive, it's engaging, it's fun, and there's a lot to learn about themselves and making them the best version that they can be.
Fantastic. Buddy, again, appreciate you being on. Do Money Differently. I know there's been a lot of value given here today. And like I said, I continue to be injected with excitement when I talk with you and what you're doing. And we'll talk to each other pretty soon. So thanks again, man, for being on.
You got it. Thanks, Todd. Appreciate you.
See you.